I guess I'm in a pretty tricky situation being an academic and trying to keep this fine line between scientific kind of, we're expected to not have feelings, we're expected to just do our science and go home at the end of the day, but it's a bit tricky when it comes to studying something like the Manawatu River, and you have all these highly motivated students and people who want to study native fish, and you go out there and they aren't there anymore. And just in the short time, relatively my lifetime, to see such huge changes happen in New Zealand, it really is a motivation to try and do something about it. So I'm portrayed, and I've just been told that this is the tactic that Federated Farmers and Fonterra are going to take, is portraying me as a radical. That way they can dismiss what I'm saying. And I just wanted to try and make you understand that I'm not the radical. I'm the conservative one who believes that we all should have, fish in our rivers and we should be able to swim in them. And the radical ones are, people like Don Nicholson. If you read any of his articles, his vision of New Zealand is one huge big farm, or a mine where we can put mines, and a farm where we can put farms, and pretty much, an industrialised New Zealand. And to me, that's radical. Not trying to save the rivers, not radical. I guess I want to explain the kind of view about rivers is that I hear about from farmers and from lots of people is that river, it's just a channel, it's a low point, it's water that goes out to the sea, it's not rocket science, anybody could understand it. That view couldn't be, further from the truth. Rocket science is simple. Anybody could, figure out how a rocket works and design it. A river and the complexities of a river are much, much more complex than a rocket. So we need to change that view, and I kind of, it's already been talked about this morning, but if you think about how this Manawatu River rises on the, begins on the other side of a mountain range, think about how that happened. That river was there long before the mountain range was there, and as the range pushed up, the river's cut down into it. That's the kind of age that we're talking about of that river, and the life that's in it has evolved over that time. And if we, to kind of put our rivers in comparison with the rest of the world, one way to try and to explain it is to think about, human obesity's in the news quite a bit lately, and if we think about the way the Manawatu River is at the moment, that I could only describe it as morbidly obese. It has so much, there's so much rubbish being pumped into it. It's just showing all the classic signs of a system that can't assimilate that amount of food anymore, and it's bloated, it's got the shakes, it's got high temperature, it's sweating, it's got everything going wrong. And if to compare our rivers to the rest of the world, we had, before 200 or 300 years ago, our rivers were lean, they were slim, they just naturally, we had forest cover, we had low temperatures, we had lots of floods, so the life in the river developed and adapted to those really, really lean rivers. And now we have fat, bloated rivers, and that's having real problems for for the life that's in them. So the work that I've been doing, we can show that about 75% of the river that used to have migratory native fish in it are no longer there. So basically the Pahongana, the Orua, the Upper Manawatu, Turamea, virtually all of the upper river, apart from the bits that flow out of the Tauruas, no longer have these migratory sensitive native fish that used to be there anymore. And the headline that made the news recently, that started off the River of Shame story in the Dominion, was some work that a top river scientist, Roger Young, at the Cawthron Institute in Nelson have been working on. And Malcolm mentioned earlier the problem that was happening 100 years ago with oxygen levels in the river. And the same thing is happening now, and it's caused by the nutrients. So there's so much nutrient going into the river, and all the life in the river responds by trying to use up that nutrient. It's just like hydroponics. You've got plants, algae growing in that river, using up that nutrient, But what happens at night is they respire and they use up all the oxygen in the river. So that, the headline was about a site in the upper Manawatu that had the highest recorded levels of gross primary productivity, which is just a measure of the difference between the oxygen when it's at its maximum and its minimum. So what it's doing is it's going from less than 40% oxygen saturation at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is enough to kill all the life in the river, to 400% in the afternoon. So it's these big swings that are causing the problem in the river, and this is the response to too much nutrient. And I know that the CEO of the Regional Council here responded by saying, oh, it's not that bad, there's no fish kills. There's no fish kills because there are no fish. That's, I mean, it's so obvious, and I've been telling him for years that that's the situation, but this is the kind of response that he comes back with. And so don't, you know, make sure you don't swallow any of this kind of PR rubbish that they're trying to cover up and deny what's happening.